In the heart of a snow-draped Denver night, my family's Christmas invitation turned to ash with a single phone call, barring me from their warmth for a reason I never saw coming. Their rejection, sharp as a blade, was meant to erase me, but it sparked a silent rebellion that would unravel their carefully curated world. What happened next wasn't just my escape, it was the moment I owned the night. And they never saw it coming. 3 days before Christmas, 2022. Denver's streets glittered under a fresh shroud of snow, the air sharp with the promise of frost. Soft jazz carols spilled from passing cars, weaving through the evening like a fragile thread of warmth. I, Skylar Morgan, pushed open the door to my one-bedroom apartment near Capitol Hill, my bones aching from a double shift at the community clinic, me fingers numb from the biting cold. Fumbled with my keys, my breath still fogged the air. A ghostly reminder of the 20-degree chill outside. I kicked off my snow-crusted boots, peeled off my navy scrubs, and let out a sigh that seemed to carry the weight of the day. By the door, a small suitcase stood ready, a pine green scarf folded neatly on top. Beside it, a cluster of gifts, each wrapped with care. Each chosen with intention, waited like silent prayers. A tin of nutmeg for Mom's pie, the exact toffee Aunt Ramona loved. I'd done everything right. Again, hoping this year I'd finally belong. The glow of my thrift store Christmas tree flickered, casting shadows across the room. I was about to collapse onto the couch when my phone buzzed. The screen flashing, Julian, my older brother, the golden son. I answered with a tired smile. Hey, Jules. His voice came through. Not warm, but cautious, like someone stepping onto thin ice. Hey, Skylar. So, heads up, Marina's coming to Christmas this year. I froze. Marina. His new girlfriend. The one who burned sage in our living room, because my work in geriatrics carried death. Julian cleared his throat. She's big on emotional alignment. You know, and the energy you bring from the clinic, it's just too heavy for her. So, we're thinking, maybe you sit this one out. Just for peace. Yeah, nothing personal. The words hit like a slap. Sharp and cold. Before I could respond, my phone lit up again. Mom. Her voice was honeyed steel. The kind that cuts while it soothes. Sweetheart, we just want harmony this Christmas. Marina's sensitive, and your presence might disrupt things. If you show up, Skylar, we won't open the door. Let's keep it simple. The line went dead. I stood rooted, the phone trembling in my hand, staring at the gifts I'd wrapped with foolish hope. My family, my blood had just locked me out of Christmas. Not for anything I'd done, but for who I was. The tree's light seemed to dim, the room's cinnamon warmth turning stale. In that shattering moment, a truth clawed its way free. I'd spent years begging for a place at their table, but they'd never set a seat for me. What would I do now? Cast out like a stranger by the people I'd loved most. The silence in my apartment after my mother's call was not merely an absence of sound, but a mirror, reflecting a lifetime of being overlooked. As the radiator's hum filled the void, I stood motionless, the phone still warm in my hand. Its screen dimming, like the hope I had carried for years. The Christmas tree's lights flickered, casting shadows across the gifts I had wrapped with such care. Now relics of a devotion that had never been reciprocated. In that moment, the weight of my family's rejection pressed against me, not as a sudden wound, but as the culmination of decades spent pouring myself into a vessel that never held me in return. I sank onto the couch, the worn fabric cool against my skin, and let my mind trace the contours of a life defined by sacrifice. Where love was a ledger, I was always balancing alone. Growing up, I was the eldest. The practice run, As my father once quipped at a summer barbecue, his laughter sharp enough to cut. The label clung to me. A quiet expectation that I would be steady, reliable. The one who held the family's edges together while others shone. Julian, 5 years my junior, was the golden child. The miracle baby whose every whim was celebrated. When he spray-painted abstract swirls across the garage wall at 15, my parents called it visionary, hanging one of his sketches in the hallway like a museum piece. 2 days later, when I dropped a ceramic dish in the kitchen, its shards scattering across the tile, I faced a lecture on carelessness that lingered for weeks. The disparity was not malicious, but a pattern, woven into the fabric of our family, where Julian's dreams were art and my efforts were merely functional. I learned early that affection was earned through utility. In high school, I completed a FAFSA application, leaving it on the counter with highlighted sections for my mother's signature. It sat untouched, gathering dust beneath a pile of Julian's band flyers. When my medical school acceptance letter arrived, I carried it home like a fragile trophy, its weight a testament to sleepless nights and solitary study. My mother glanced at it, her eyes flickering with something like approval before she said, "That's intense. Don't let it consume you," and returned to slicing vegetables. Meanwhile, when Julian abandoned college to launch a wellness podcast, my parents hosted a candlelit dinner. Toasting his courage, balloons bobbed in the dining room, and a framed photo of him clutching a microphone joined the hallway gallery. A shrine to his potential. My milestones, graduations, board certifications passed without fanfare, as if my steadiness was expected, not celebrated. This dynamic followed me into adulthood, where my role as the family's silent benefactor solidified after a snowstorm damaged my parents' roof, and their insurance claim was denied. I wired the funds to cover repairs, my bank account aching from the transfer. When Julian's freelance gigs faltered, his rent unpaid for months, I sent money without question. Each transaction, a quiet plea for belonging. My father's car insurance, lapsed after a missed payment, was reinstated with my co-signature, a decision I made in the dim glow of a hospital break room. My mother's hip surgery, left uncovered by a lapsed policy, prompted me to coordinate payments and therapy sessions. My voice steady on late-night calls with billing offices. These acts were not heroic but habitual, born from a belief that love was transactional, a debt I paid to earn a place at their table. Yet gratitude was a language my family never spoke. They accepted my contributions as one accepts sunlight necessary. Unremarkable. No thank you crossed their lips. No acknowledgement warmed their eyes. I told myself it was enough to be needed, that being indispensable was its kind of love. But the truth lay buried in moments like the day I found my sketchbook in their recycling bin. Its pages, filled with pencil sketches of Denver's sunsets and patients' hands clasped in recovery, were crumpled beneath takeout menus. When I asked, my mother shrugged, saying she thought it was scrap. The dismissal stung, not for the loss of the drawings but for what it revealed to them. My inner world was as disposable as my efforts. My choice to specialize in geriatrics was no accident. In the quiet rooms of the community clinic, I sat with patients whose lives had been reduced to fading photographs and whispered regrets. They were the forgotten, their stories overlooked by families too busy to linger. I saw myself in their solitude, in the way they clutched my hand during rounds, grateful for someone who stayed. My work was not just medicine, but a reclamation, a way to honor the unseen, to give dignity to those who had poured out their lives only to be left behind. Yet at home, I remained the same, the steady daughter, the invisible hand-patching cracks in a family that never noticed until something broke. That night, as the snow fell outside my window, soft and relentless, I realized how deeply I had internalized their indifference. I had been the scaffolding, essential but uncelebrated, holding up a structure that never paused to see me. The gifts by my door, the suitcase packed with care, were not just offerings for Christmas, but symbols of a lifetime spent trying to prove my worth. My parents' house, with its framed photos of Julian and its empty walls where my achievements might have hung, was a gallery of their priorities. I had spent years believing that if I gave enough money, time, and silence, I would earn a place in their light. But their rejection, delivered so casually, revealed a truth I could no longer ignore. I had been loving a family that did not know how to love me back. The radiator clicked. Its warmth, a faint counterpoint to the chill settling in my chest. I set the phone down, its screen now dark, and let the silence wrap around me. It was not empty but heavy, filled with the weight of every unasked question, every unreturned gesture. For the first time, I did not rush to fill it. I let it hold me. Its stillness a mirror not of absence but of possibility. The snow outside thickened, muffling the city's hum, and I felt the stirrings of something new, not anger, not yet resolve, but a quiet reckoning. I had been the daughter who fixed, who paid, who stayed. But in their decision to bar me from their celebration, they had unknowingly set me free, to question whether I wanted to keep carrying their weight. The silence that enveloped me after my family's rejection was no longer a weight but a canvas, vast and uncharted, urging me to act. As the snow thickened beyond my window, its soft descent a quiet absolution. I felt the stirrings of a resolve I had never dared to claim. For too long, I had been the unseen current keeping my family's world afloat. My sacrifice is a currency for a love they never returned. But in that moment, with the radiator's hum as my only companion, I chose to stop. I would no longer be the scaffolding for a structure that refused to see me. My hands, steady from years of suturing wounds and charting vitals, moved with purpose, not anger. As I began to dismantle the invisible chains I had worn, I opened my laptop, its screen casting a cold glow across the dim room. My banking app loaded, each click a deliberate step toward liberation. The automatic transfer of $8. Ling. Sent monthly to cover my parents' mortgage. Flickered on the screen. I hovered over the cancel button, my breath shallow. Then pressed it. The confirmation was instantaneous. A quiet severing of a cord I had mistaken for duty. Next, I locked my emergency savings, a fund I had dipped into for Julian's unpaid bills and my parents' unexpected repairs. With a few more taps, I terminated the joint car insurance I had co-signed for my father. Its lapse no longer my burden. Each action was mechanical, like charting a patient's dossier. Yet beneath the routine stirred a profound stillness. As if my soul was exhaling for the first time, I reached for a notebook, its pages worn from hospital scribbles, and began to list the debts I had carried in silence. The plane tickets I had bought for Julian's impulsive trips, the medical bills I had settled when my mother's therapy lapsed, the utility payments I had covered during their lean months. The list grew, ink blurring, not from tears, but from the weight of my unseen labor. I wrote not to accuse, but to witness, to see the scope of my giving laid bare. The act was a reckoning, a mirror held to a life I had let shrink to fit their needs. When I set the pen down, the notebook felt heavier, a testament to the cost of my loyalty. I rose and approached the Christmas tree, its lights still blinking with naive cheer. My fingers found the plug, and with a gentle tug, I silenced its glow. The room darkened, the shadows softening the outlines of the gifts I had wrapped with such hope. I gathered them, each ribbon, a reminder of my misplaced faith, and carried them to the hall closet. As I slid them onto a shelf, their shiny paper dulled by the dim light, I felt no sorrow, only clarity. I was not erasing Christmas, but reclaiming it, refusing to press my face to a window that had never opened for me. The snow outside fell thicker now, muffling the city's pulse. I stood by the window, my reflection faint against the glass, and felt a sensation unfamiliar yet undeniable freedom. It was not loud or triumphant, but tentative, like a seedling breaking through frost. My heart, so long tethered to their approval, beat with a new rhythm, one that answered only to me. I had spent years believing my worth lay in what I could provide, but in that quiet act of refusal, I began to see myself not as their savior, but as my own. The cage I had lived in was not locked. I had simply never tried the door. Now, I stepped through, leaving their expectations behind, like footprints buried in snow. Christmas morning dawned, soft and gray, the Denver skyline cloaked in fog, snow dusting the rooftops like forgotten promises. I sat by my window, wrapped in a wool blanket that carried the faint scent of rosemary, a mug of cinnamon apple tea cradled in my hands. The steam rose in delicate curls, a quiet companion to the stillness that filled my apartment. The unlit tree stood in the corner, its ornaments untouched. Yet I felt no ache, only a sacred calm, like the hush after a long-held breath. I did not call or text, did not scroll for festive updates. For the first time, I let the silence be mine, a space where I could simply exist, unburdened by the need to fix or prove. Across town, in a house aglow with lights and laughter, my absence became a fracture. At the family gathering, Marina, wine glass in hand, paused before a mantel lined with photos. Her eyes caught a faded snapshot from a long-ago birthday. You me mid-laugh in a too large sweater. That's Skylar. Isn't it? She asked, her voice clear in the festive hum. The doctor who stayed with my neighbor through the night saved her life. The room stilled. Laughter faltered. Forks paused. Glasses ceased clinking. My mother's smile tightened. Julian's face drained of color. Marina's gaze swept the silent faces. Confusion, sharpening her tone. Wait. Skylar's your sister. Whatever half-truth followed. It was enough. Marina set down her glass, thanked them with a courtesy sharp as ice, and left. By evening, the ripple had spread. Marina posted online, not a tirade, but a few precise lines about families who erase their own to preserve a polished story, about the harm woven into curated silences. The words, though I never read them, struck like a match in the dry tinder of my family's image. Julian's art circles, small and gossipy, began to whisper. Friends questioned. Connections wavered. And his charm was no longer enough to shield him. The fallout was not mine. Yet it found me. My phone buzzed as dusk painted the sky, a bruised purple. Aunt Ramona's name flashed. I answered, my voice rough from disuse. What happened? Her tone was soft. Careful, they're saying you ruined Christmas. Skylar. But you weren't even there. The accusation stung. Not for its falsehood, but for its audacity. I had been uninvited. Yet my absence was the crime. In that moment, I understood they did not miss me. Only the version of me who smoothed their edges. But that Skylar was gone. And with her, the illusion they had built. The echo of Aunt Ramona's words, my family's claim that I had ruined their Christmas, lingered like a bruise as I set down the phone. The Denver night pressed against my window, snowflakes swirling in the streetlight's glow. But I felt no urge to defend myself. Their accusation, though baseless, revealed a deeper truth. They did not seek me. But the control they had lost, in the days that followed, their desperation unfurled, not as reconciliation, but as a calculated campaign to reclaim the Skylar who had once bent to their will. I watched it unfold. my heart steady. My resolve a wall forged not of bitterness but of clarity. The first move came in an email. If its subject line, a hollow plea, let's reset. Signed by my parents and Julian. It read like a corporate briefing. All polished phrases and no substance. They spoke of holiday stress, of misunderstandings, but buried in the text was the true request. Could I reach out to Marina? Clarify her misconception. Mend the damage to Julian's reputation. The words were not an apology, but a transaction. A demand veiled in familial unity. I read it once, my finger hovering over the delete key, and let it vanish unanswered. Their need was not my burden. I had carried enough. Then came a sharper tactic. My phone rang one afternoon. The hospital administrator's name flashing unexpectedly. David Reynolds, whose kind eyes I recalled from a fundraiser, spoke hesitantly. Skylar, your father called. He's concerned about your emotional well-being and suggested you might need time off. The words chilled me. Not for their lie, but for their intent. My father, who had once dismissed my intensity as a flaw, now wielded it as a weapon. Hoping to unsettle my professional standing, David's skepticism was clear. He saw through the ploy, but the attempt was a stark reminder they sought leverage, not love. I thanked him, my voice even, and hung up. The betrayal settling like frost in my veins. Their final gambit arrived on a Sunday in mid-January. The winter cold biting at my apartment's edges. I was charting patient notes, a mug of tea cooling beside me, when a soft knock broke the quiet. Through the peephole, I saw them, my mother, father, Julian bundled in coats, their smiles thin as cracked ice. I opened the door a fraction, letting the cold slip through, but kept the chain in place. My mother's voice, soft as a practiced lullaby, began. We just want to talk. I stood unmoved, my gaze steady. Julian shifted nervously, and my father's jaw tightened with impatience. They were not here for me, but for the Skylar who had once folded herself small to fit their needs. That woman no longer existed. No, I said, the word simple. Final. My mother's face faltered, disbelief flickering in her eyes. As if she could not fathom my refusal, I closed the door. The click of the lock, a boundary drawn in steel. Their voices rose outside, first pleading, then sharp with frustration. But I returned to my desk, the tea's bitterness grounding me. They wanted the old Skylar, the one who smoothed their chaos with silence and sacrifice. But I had stepped beyond their reach, my heart no longer theirs to shape. The snow outside fell softly, erasing their footsteps, and I sat in the stillness, not as a daughter seeking approval, but as a woman claiming her own space. Their desperation was not my failure, but theirs a mirror they could not escape. The days after my family's visit unfolded gently, like petals opening to dawn. The silence in my apartment, once heavy, became a sanctuary, a space where I could breathe without expectation. One afternoon, a small package arrived. Its brown paper marked only with my name in neat, slanted script. Inside was a letter from Marina, its ivory stationery smudged at the edges. Her words pressed with care. She wrote of her grandmother, still vibrant, walking to the market each Saturday. Marina described how, when hope had waned, one doctor had stayed, treating her grandmother not as a case but as a life, still rich with possibility. You reminded her she was living, she wrote. I read the letter thrice, my fingers tracing its ink, then framed it above my desk, where morning light could touch its truth. Another email from my family arrived soon after, its tone less polished, more frantic. They begged for reconciliation, for me to ask Marina to remove her post. Sitting Julian's faltering prospects. I let it sit unread. Its words, no longer my concern. Some doors, once closed, remain shut not from spite, but from self-respect. At the hospital, I moved through my rounds, sitting with patients whose families filled their rooms with laughter, and those whose solitude mirrored my own. I listened, stayed, and offered the quiet presence that held lives together. This work, unseen by most, was my anchor. A purpose that needed no applause. Sitting at my desk one evening, the framed letter catching the fading light, I reflected on the years I had spent seeking a place in a family that saw me only when it served them. I had once believed love required my silence, my sacrifice. But in choosing myself, I had discovered a truth more enduring. My worth was not theirs to grant. The snow outside whispered against the glass, a soft hymn to my freedom. I invite you, if this resonates, to share your story. Speak of the moments you felt unseen, the boundaries you built. In naming our truths, we remind each other, we are not alone. You are enough, just as you are. As I sit in the quiet of my Denver apartment, the winter's chill softened by the glow of a single lamp, I trace the lessons that have reshaped my understanding of love and self-worth. For years, I believed that devotion was measured by what I could give time, resources, pieces of my spirit offered without expectation of return. I thought that by being indispensable, I would secure a place in the hearts of those I held dear. But the silence that followed their dismissal taught me a truth as stark as the snow outside my window. Love is not a debt to be paid, nor a role to be performed. It is a gift, freely given. And I had been pouring mine into hands that never opened to receive it. The first lesson was the power of boundaries. I learned that saying no, not out of spite but from self-respect, is an act of courage. By stepping back, I reclaimed the space I had surrendered, discovering that my value does not diminish when I refuse to shrink for others' comfort. The second lesson was the clarity of self-recognition. I had let others' indifference define me, mistaking their oversight for my lack. But in solitude, I saw myself not as a function, but as a woman with dreams, flaws, and a heart worthy of celebration. Finally, I understood that true belonging begins within. No external validation, no matter how cherished, can substitute for the quiet certainty of knowing I am enough. These truths, hard-won, are now my compass. They guide me through the hospital's quiet corridors, where I offer presence to those who feel forgotten. And in the stillness of my own life, where I choose peace over performance. The snow falls softly outside, a reminder that renewal follows even the harshest winters. I no longer seek a seat at a table that never set a place for me. Instead, I build my own, where love is not earned but shared, and where I stand, whole and unapologetic, in the light of my truth.